Hey class, Prof. JC here, and I am excited about what we're going to talk about today. 5 things that make people listen to you. 5 things that make people listen to you. I think this is going to add value to you. Before we dive in, I wanted to share this kind of a life lesson with you, and it's something I'm sharing with all my classes because it's been on my mind a lot in recent days. So I'm working on my dissertation right now for my doctorate. I have ADD, ADHD, probably more ADD now at my age. But because of that, I have to have noise going on pretty much all the time, especially when I'm concentrating. And so in recent days, I have found myself listening to I guess it's been YouTube videos. So I have my computer that I work on, and then I have a computer that sits next to me. And I just let, normally it's a podcast, Joe Rogan, leadership podcast. I love to listen to those, business documentaries. But in recent days, I have found one of my favorite groups. I grew up in Indiana, and so I have a love for, I remember the summer days in classic rock and 80s and 90s rock. And you can judge me all you want, but it's just the truth. I'm a huge fan of the group Def Leppard. I got to go see them with a buddy of mine in Las Vegas. Maybe it was about 4 years ago now. One of the best concerts in my time of life. Actually got to meet Phil Collin, who's one of the guitarists and vocalists, and got to meet Rick Allen down in kind of the lobby at Planet Hollywood. If you know anything about Rick Allen, he's just an amazing drummer. And these people were amazing human beings. I think that's what really got me. So anyway, I found somehow in YouTube, it came up in my suggestions to watch their behind the scenes of their stadium tour, and they just did another tour with Motley Crue, and so it's like these 15-minute videos that just roll one right after another. So I had to sit down and do a ton of work the other day, and so I just let those videos play. And it was amazing to watch these guys who are pros. They've been around. The band began, I believe, if I'm correct here, I want to say it's 1976. And they've been going for, there was another band that I was looking at that's been going since 1973, but I don't think it was them. No. Okay, that was something else. So Def Leppard's they've been around since 1976. So they've been going 47 years. Now, the older I get, the more I realize when you have a group or a person, I don't care what field it's in, when you have anybody or a band or a singer or whatever who's been around 3, 4, 5 decades, and they've done it consistently well, and they're still out there doing stuff. I mean, when I saw them at the residency in Las Vegas, they were sold out. I think like 16 shows sold out. If you look on their website, they're everywhere. They're touring all over the place. And so anyway, I just started watching their videos, and their lead singer, Joe Elliott, if you know anything about him, he'll come on and he'll say Captain's blog or Captain's vlog or whatever, or Captain's log. And so he'll say that, and he'll just talk about the show, whatever. But then in about 3 different videos, he talked about this. He brought this issue up about how Def Leppard just keeps going strong. And he said this, he said, we're not, we don't put on great shows. We don't put on horrible shows. And in his British accent, he says, we are consistent. And he just talked about the importance of every time we show up on stage, we know it's going to be a good show every single time. And he said this probably about 3 different times in all the videos I watched. He just talked about being consistent. And so I wanted to share that with you. This is a freebie before we get into what we're getting ready to talk about. I have learned the older I get in life, it's not about being charming. It's not about having the big ideas. It's not about impressing people 1, 2, 3 times. What keeps people around long term, and that's what I want for you in your leadership journey, your life journey, in your relationships, in your professional life, whatever it is. I want you to be successful long term, and the way to make that happen is consistency. Okay. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's been on my mind a lot. It's just been rolling around, and there's been a couple other examples that I won't share with you in my life that have kind of come up. So it's just a good reminder for me, a good reminder for you that if we're going to be successful, more than anything, we've got to be consistent. Okay. So here we go. Let's dive in and talk about what we're going to talk about today. Connection. That's what we're talking about. This is a communications course. And so we're talking about this idea of connecting. I'm on page 101 in this book right here. This was an optional book, so you don't have to get it. I will share with you the lessons, and then you'll kind of spit them back to me. And So let's dive in. Here we go. Page 101. If you want to be a better communicator or a better leader, you can't depend on dumb luck. You must learn to connect with others by making the most of whatever skill and experience you have. When I listen, this is John Maxwell speaking, when I listen to great communicators, I notice that there are a handful of factors that seem to draw upon, that cause people to listen to them. As you read about them, think about which of them you could use to connect with others. So I'm going to give you 5 things that make people listen to you. Okay, so if you're in a leadership role, if you're in a speaking role, if you're in a teaching role, whatever it is, you've got to have that ability to connect with people. That's important for you to do as leaders. And so let's talk about what makes people connect back with you and listen to you. So number 1 is this, what John Maxwell would state. Number 1 is relationships, and it's who you know. So then he goes on to say here, he says, why did millions of people start listening to Dr. Phil McGraw, psychologist? If you remember him, now some of his examples, John Maxwell, he's older than I am, so he's probably in his 60s or whatever. So he'll have examples in his book that really come back from the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s. So you've probably heard of Dr. Phil before, though. Why did millions of people start listening to Dr. Phil McGraw, a psychologist who helped lawyers as a trial consultant, and begin taking his advice on life, love, and relationships? For the same reasons that millions of people started listening to Dr. Mehmet Oz about health issues. Both men knew Oprah Winfrey. Now, again, this is another one, Oprah Winfrey. I think she had a daytime talk show for like 25, 26, 27 years. She's still doing a lot. Obviously, you've heard that name before, of Oprah. And it was because of her, she kind of put her hand of blessing, if you want to call it that, on Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz. And because of that, these two people really flew and they succeeded. Okay. Certainly these two men have credentials. Dr. McGraw has a PhD in psychology, and Oz is a cardiothoracic surgeon and Columbia University professor. So both are brilliant men. But most people neither know or care about these facts. As soon as Oprah Winfrey's followers learned she had confidence in them, they had confidence in them. So one of the quickest ways to gain credibility with an individual, a group, or an audience is to borrow it from someone else who's already had credibility with them. It's like when every 4 years or every 2 years, we have election season. And so you'll see these candidates come out. And one of the most important things that they try to do is at the very beginning, they try to wrap up as many endorsements as possible, especially if it's an unknown candidate. Why do they do that? Because they know this about human nature. I may not trust you as a politician, but I trust so-and-so. And if so-and-so puts their, again, hand of blessing on you, then I'm going to trust them. So people will listen to you based on the relationships you have. So that's really important, to build relationships. Now, don't go out and build relationships with people to use them. Okay. Very successful people. Here's one thing I know about, and I have had the privilege to be in rooms with some really successful people. Here's what I know about them. They can smell that 10 miles away. Somebody who's coming in the room trying to build relationships because they're trying to get something out of them. When you're in rooms with highly successful people, okay, and I'm not saying I'm one of those people. I'm just saying that I've been lucky enough to be in some rooms with very highly successful people. They expect you to act like you've been there before. And if you're going to build a relationship, it's because you really want to get to know them long term. I have a friend of mine who's a very successful consultant, lives in La Jolla. And when we first met, I met him because I wanted a job and I wanted some work. This was a few years ago. And none of that really panned out, just for whatever reason. Now I work with another consulting firm and he still does great with his, but we've kept our relationship going. And he's a Jewish white man in La Jolla. I'm a Christian Afro-Latino that lives in the South Bay, East Lake. And yet we've connected. Now, I'll tell you what's really cool about that. Since our relationship is beginning to take off just for no reason, just then to have a relationship, it's pretty cool, some doors that are beginning to open, and some people he's been introducing me to, and the people that will hopefully help my business take off, and some of those kind of things. But it came from relationships. So anyway, it's what you know, but it's not about building relationships to use people. Don't ever do that. Okay, people can smell that a mile away. Get in there and build relationships with people you want to build relationships with. This guy I'm talking about, this consultant, he's just a really good guy. I love sitting down with him. We have lunches and we just laugh and talk the whole time. And then if there's anything business we talk about, then we get to that. But just build relationships for that sake. Number 2, what makes people listen to you? Number 2 is this: insight what you know. It's why it's good that you're getting this degree. It's why it's good that you're getting education. Obviously, I'm a big fan of education. It's important what you know. Most people want to improve their situation in life when they find someone who can communicate something of value. Okay, that means that's you. Okay, they will usually listen. If what they learn really helps, a sense of connection between them can often develop quickly. Okay, so again, it's what you know, but that relates back to some of the things we've already talked about. Are you adding value to them? Are you helping them? It is amazing to me how many people I sit down with and they just start talking and all they do is talk about themselves. Okay. The worst thing I think you can do as a leader, as a person in leadership position, is just talk about yourself. I'm guilty of it sometimes as well. I'm a teacher. I'm a consultant. I'm a trainer. I use my mouth to, this mouth makes me a living. It earns my living. So if I'm not careful, I'll sit down and just start blabbing my mouth and start talking about things. What people want is they want you to offer value to them. Okay. So it's what you know, but it's how you connect what you know to help that person. Again, we've talked about this before, with them and with it. People are always thinking what's in it for me. So you have to be thinking what's in it for them. Number 3, John says this, success, what you have done, your track record, where you've been, right? Are you someone that jumps all over the place? Are you someone who, if I were to call your references, they would tell me you were a horrible worker, you gossiped all the time, you caused problems in the organization? Is that you? Or are you a person who's been successful, who's stuck around someplace long-term, or has done one thing for a while, okay? So here's what he has to say. He says, a lot of people ask me how I got my starts. This is John Maxwell, as a speaker outside of a local church. They want to know what my market strategy was and how I was able to break in. John Maxwell says, the truth is I didn't have a plan to become that kind of speaker. People became aware of the success that I had. So John Maxwell, if you know anything about his story, he actually was a pastor here in San Diego County, and he grew Skyline Church. Now, not to what it is today. Skyline Church is amazing. If you've ever been out there to East County, Rancho San Diego, they've got a campus, 2 huge buildings. And the story of how they had to build those buildings was incredible. So they had John Maxwell, then a gentleman by the name of Jim Garlow, and now they have a gentleman by the name of Jeremy McGarity. And these 3 pastors are incredible leaders. But John Maxwell, who actually came after Orville, I want to say Orville Butcher, but I don't know if that's the right name. I think he was the founding pastor. He hired John Maxwell. John Maxwell took that church over, and they had, I don't know, a few hundred, but he turned it into a few thousand. And his leadership really helped that church really take off and start succeeding. So because of that, and here's what John Maxwell says, America has a success culture. Whether you like it or not, that's just how it is here in America. People want to be successful, and they seek out others who have accomplished something to get their advice. So if you've done something worthy, okay, if you've built something, if you've done something successful, people will listen to you, okay? It's one of the reasons why I tell younger people, if you haven't accomplished anything, keep your mouth shut. Don't walk into a meeting and start talking about everything you know. You haven't done anything yet, right? And the older you get, and again, the rooms that you get in, the most important thing that we can, and this is for me too, right? Especially when I'm sitting in rooms with 50, 60, 70-year-olds who've been massively successful. My job isn't to go in there and talk about how I'm an associate professor of leadership. They don't care, right? Well, what have you done? What have you given back to the world consistently over a period of time? What have you built? Okay. And if I have nothing to add to that conversation, all I do is ask questions, and I recommend the same thing for you. People will listen to you, though, once you've built a track record somewhere doing something big. Okay, something successful. That's just the way our culture works. And if you want, and it doesn't mean you have to go build a huge business or something. It could be, I think about a person I know who's she spent her whole life as an educator, high school teacher. But you know what? She gave 45 years of her life to teaching students. That's someone I'm going to listen to. Even around the 25-year mark, I'm going to listen to her, right? And I don't care what it is. This is something I've learned. It doesn't matter what it is. When I hear about someone who has been at Walmart as a, sometimes you hear about these people, they've been a department manager, they've worked at Walmart for 40 years. I find that impressive. And I want to know, how did you manage that? How did you stay in one company for that long? And what did you learn in 40 years of doing your work? How did you stay at it and not get canned, not get fired, whatever? How did you stay at that job, right? But there's something about people giving time to something. If someone's been married 5 years and they're trying to give you a bunch of marriage advice, that's not how you're going to take it from. Now, when someone comes to you, they've been married 25, 35, 40, 50 years, that's somebody that you'll listen to. So success has a lot to do with how. So until we have that success, Okay. The best thing we can do is ask questions. Number 4 is this, your ability. So what you can do. Individuals who perform at a high level in their profession often have instant credibility with other people. That's, again, it's the success culture we live in, like it or not. That's just the way it is. People admire them. People admire people who do well. They want to be like them. They want to feel connected to them. When they speak, other people listen, even if the area of skill has nothing to do with the advice they give. So again, it goes back to what I'm talking about. If I find out someone's been a very successful scientist, I want to get to know them. I'm not a rock star. Okay. I'll never be a rock star. That's not in the cards for me. But I'm going to listen to Joe Elliott talk about how you kept Def Leppard around for 47 years. There's another band called Metallica out there. And I know this sounds weird, but again, if you listen to these guys in their interviews, I'm not saying go out there and emulate their lives and maybe some of the mistakes they made early on when they were younger, but you listen to the lead singer, Joe Hetfield of Metallica, listen to him talk about his journey and how they kept it together, how him and Lars Ulrich, who's the drummer for Metallica, how they came together and all the fights they had and all the problems they had and how James had to go through therapy and problems and alcoholism and stuff, but they stayed at it, right? They've been together 42 years. Right. So it's people who've been successful. And we listen to those people, even if they're not in our field, because we know that they've done something well. And if you're not doing that, you need to start doing that. Find people in any field who's done something well. But your ability will make people listen to you, okay? So be very good at what you do, and I promise you that people will listen to you. And then number 5, this is my favorite one here, is sacrifice. How you have lived. People will listen to you based on how you've lived. And John Maxwell says this: Mother Teresa had the respect and the ear of leaders around the world. People of all faiths seemed to admire her. Why was that? Why did they listen to her, a poor, diminutive school teacher who lived in the slums of India? Because of the life of sacrifice that she had lived. And if you've ever watched any speeches from Mother Teresa, you know that it's so worthwhile to listen to her. It's one of the reasons why I listen to I listen to all kinds of people. So you got to know that about me. I listen to pastors. I listen to rabbis. I listen to imams. I listen to leaders. But it's one of my favorite kind of people. And obviously I'm a teacher, so I love to listen to teachers, but not just professors or whatever. And I do love to listen to professors. But when I listen to high school teachers talk, and maybe that's because my mother was a high school, or she wasn't high school. She was a middle school public teacher. I guess what I'm saying is when I hear a public school teacher talk, especially ones who've served long term, it really tunes me in, right? What lessons did they learn dealing with what they had to deal with, and the parents and the students, and in a public school system, and the unions and all the things you have to deal with, and not even making that much money, and they gave their life to that, right? That's something that we can respect. Okay, I think of other people who are in fields, right, that I probably would never go into. Missions work, right? It's probably not something I feel called to do, but I love to listen to these people. Why? Because they have given their lives for sacrifice, right? For the greater good, for other people. That, I tell you what, the older I get, nothing turns me on more than that, than to listen to someone who's given their life for something greater than themselves. And they've done it without trying to make a ton of money. They've done it without trying to make a name for themselves. They've just stayed at it because they really care about that thing. So those are the 5 things. If you want people to listen to you, you've got to be able to have these 5 things, right? And you don't need to have all 5 of them, but you need to have at least 1 or 2 of them, okay? So here's what I want to ask. So here are the questions I want to ask, okay? And number 1 is, this goes all the way back to what we talked to at the beginning. I just want you to answer this, no right or wrong answers, but what is the one thing that Def Leppard said? No, I'm sorry. There is a right or wrong answer for this. It goes back to what we said. But what is the one thing that Def Leppard said is responsible for their success? Okay, so I want you to write that out. Why is that? And then I just want you to write out what are the 5 things that we just listed that will help people connect with you, help people listen to you. And then I just want you to write just 2 or 3 sentences about what one stands out most to you and resonates most with you for how you want to help people connect with you. That's all I got for you today. Hey, thanks so much for listening. I'll see you. Actually, next week, we do not have a podcast because next week, can you believe it? We're already in week 4 next week. And so you'll be focusing on your group project. So we're not going to have a podcast for you to worry about next week. But I'll see you in a couple weeks on the next episode. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.